everyone, thanks for joining. We should be here today for the Simplex-IT Monthly Project Management webinar. Today's topic is Microsoft Project Basics. So we're just going to start with the basics here. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, just let me know. You can either type a message in the chat screen, I'll keep that open over on my other monitor and try to keep an eye on it, or just shout it out. I do have the participants on mute, so if you want to ask a question, just let me know and I will unmute everybody. At least I think I have everybody on mute. Let me double check that before we get started. I see a few folks are still joining. All right, so it's a few minutes after 2 o'clock. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Again, my name is Patty, and we should be here for the Simplex-IT Monthly Project Management webinar. And today we're going to talk about Microsoft Project Basics. So today's focus is just going to be on what you need to know to get started with project. And this webinar is almost entirely a demonstration. I didn't even create any slides for it because I just really wanted to get into project and sort of show you around. So I'm just going to switch over to project. And this is the very first screen that you see. So the only thing I did before this webinar was I just launched the program. That was all I did. So I opened up project and it gives me this blank project to start with, just like if you were to open up Word or Excel, it gives you a blank Word or Excel document to start with. So from here, there's a couple different ways you can get started. One way is to just dive in and start creating tasks. Before we do that, though, I just want to familiarize you with the ribbons along the top. So it's very similar to the other products that you may be working with already in Microsoft. So you still have the ribbons and the tabs, just like you do in Word and Excel and all of your other favorite programs. So you have the File tab, which is where you can go, obviously to save and open. And then you have the Task tab. This is where any of your task information, you can go here to change it. So simple things like changing the font and the color, but then some more advanced things like changing the tasks that are linked together, changing the % complete. You also have a tab for resources. So the resource tab will show you all of the, typically your project team. So everybody on your project team will be listed here. And then their utilization. You can access all of their, what they're working on, when their availability, when they may have availability, so on. So all of anything related to resources is under the resource tab, as you would expect it. In the report tab, this is where we have all of the reports. So there are a lot of nice reports that are already created for you. And then you actually have the option to create your own custom report. So once we get some data in these projects, then we can start looking at some of the reporting. But for right now, they'll all be blank since this is a blank project. But that'll be a future webinar. I think we have that on the schedule for a few months down the road. We'll talk about the reports in Microsoft Project. The Project tab just gives you information about your project as a whole. This is a great place to come to get started, and we'll take a look at some of the options here before we actually start entering some task and project details. And then you also have the View tab. The View tab is great for controlling your view, as you might expect. So you have different views, like the one that you see right here is called the Gantt chart, but if you click on the very first button there in the view bar, you can change it to different different views, and we'll talk about that in future webinars. And then the last one is just the Format tab. Because I have the Gantt chart view open, I can control how the formatting appears, so different colors, things like that. But if I just wanted to just sit down in front of the computer and start putting in a project in Microsoft Project, that's sort of the where we're going to start now. So once you have your project sort of scoped out, so you've met with your project team, you know what you want to do, you kind of have an idea of what tasks need to be done. Here you can start entering the task names right in these rows here. One of the things that you may want to do first is click on this project information button in the project tab. That allows you to control the start date of the project. And really, you can change this at any time. Really, the only thing it does is it changes the default for all of the new tasks that you add. So it saves you the time of changing that. But let's say that I'm working on a project and it's going to start on, oh, let's say February 15th. Okay, so I'm just going to change that start date field. I just clicked on the little drop down arrow here and changed the start date to February 15th. Now you'll notice I can't change the finish date. So project wants me to change or enter either the start date or the finish date. And I can determine which one I'm changing by changing where it says schedule from. So if I want to schedule it from the start date, I select project start date and then I give it a start date. If I want to schedule it from the finish date, I can select project finish date and then notice how finish date becomes available now, and here I can edit it. Okay. Scheduling it from the project finish date is oftentimes tempting because sometimes we know when we need to finish a project. You know, we're given a hard deadline, it needs to be done on this date, so we want to schedule it on that date. But everything sort of is scheduled backwards from that point, and sometimes it can get a little bit confusing just because it's not how we think, you know, logically in linear terms as far as calendar time goes. So it might throw you off from time to time. And also I found that I tend to cut myself a little too short on time if I try to schedule it from the finish date, because inevitably we need some slack time throughout our projects. So I like to just schedule it from the start date because I usually know when a project is going to start, more so than when it may end. So I just changed the project start date here and click OK. And you'll notice you haven't really noticed much of a change. The only thing that really changes is the dates over here in project. And you'll notice as I start to enter my tasks, you'll see the task bars appear here. Okay. Now as far as entering my tasks go, we do all of that here in the task list. The first two columns I usually just ignore. Well, I don't ignore them. I don't enter anything into them. The very first column is an indicator column. That's if there's any kind of an alert, or maybe you have a resource that's over allocated, or there's some type of notification that project is trying to give to you, then that would appear in the first column, in this indicator column. And usually it appears in an icon, and you can hover over top of it to get some more detail. The task mode column, this is something new in the last few versions of Project. So just keep an eye on this. I have my tasks scheduled, I have my tasks set to be auto-scheduled. The other option is manually scheduled. And I just can change this by looking all the way down at the bottom where it says new tasks, auto-scheduled. I can change it to manually scheduled. Now the big difference is auto-scheduled will change the task dates based on other durations and other dependencies. Manual will not. Manual is like a glorified Excel spreadsheet. So if you change a task and you're expecting the other tasks to reschedule or change the dates, manual will not do that. And I know some folks really like it because sometimes when project starts changing the dates on you, it gets frustrating. So in that case, you would want to choose manually scheduled. But if you've got a long project and you want to be able to change one task, if you've got one task that takes a little bit longer and you want all of the other tasks to show that they'll be getting a late start, then you have to choose auto-scheduled. Okay. If you've worked with Project in the past, you're probably used to auto-scheduled. The manual schedule was new. Not anything that was new. It was available, but it was kind of hidden in an option that wasn't very easy to find. So now it's a little bit more readily available. So I am a traditionalist. I'm used to working with it in auto-schedule, so I like it in auto-schedule. But let's say that we have our first task. And I'm just going to create a task for a, how about a guide, like a operations manual or something like that, a procedure guide, something for work. So the very first task that I can enter, let's say that I will create a task and call it Draft Chapter 1. So I'm just going to select the very first row under task name, and I'll call it Draft Chapter 1. I'm just going to type that. And I just press Tab. And notice when I press Tab, it fills in my task mode. And it also gives me a taskbar over here in my Gantt chart. It defaults to a 1-day duration, and it defaults to the start date of my project. Because I've entered the first task, project assumes that I want to do the first task on the first day of the project. Now I know this is going to take me longer than 1 day, so I can override this default duration. Let's say it's going to take me 15 days. I'm going to type in 15 days. I still want to start it on the 15th, and notice that project has scheduled out 15 days and is now scheduling this task to finish on the 7th. Okay. Now you will notice over in my Gantt bar that the Gantt bar goes through the weekends, but you can control that so that you can either choose to work weekends, you can choose to work 24-hour days, you can choose to work Monday through Friday, whatever calendar works best for you. But regardless of the calendar, this one is set up for Monday through Friday. The Gantt bar will still just go through the weekend, even though the task is not scheduled to do anything that weekend, just so it doesn't, stop and start. So even though the weekends aren't calculated here, they just still kind of go through the weekend. So let's see. Let's after I draft Chapter 1, let's have somebody proof it. So we'll say proof Chapter 1, and let's say that will take 3 days. And then I'm going to add in some images, and that'll take me 2 days. And then how about make any last minute changes? So we'll just do make changes. And we'll save that. We'll make that 2 days as well. Okay. Now you noticed that I had made a typo, which I do all the time. So I can come in to any one of these tasks and just double click on it, and that'll open what's called the task information window. So it opens up the task information window and tells me everything I need to know about this task. Okay. So here I can change the name of it and the duration, and then all of these other fields. So I can mark it complete or partially complete. I can change the way it's scheduled. I can change the priority, the dates within it. Another one that we'll talk about in some of the other webinars is the Advanced tab. So here you can give your tasks a deadline. You can change the type of task that it is. You can mark it as a milestone. So just some details there. I'll just click OK. But again, just to double click on any one of those tasks will open up that task information window. Now if I wanted to add, let's say I wanted to add a row up at the top that would sort of act as a header row for my project. I can right click on the number 1 up over here to the top left. So I can right click and select insert task, and that just moves every other task down and gives me a new task. So here I can call it, let's call it operations manual. And I'm not going to worry about the duration because the duration is going to be a total of all of the tasks underneath it. Right now, it's not though. Okay, so right now, project is showing me exactly what I have entered. So my first draft chapter 1 takes 15 days. I'm going to do that on the very first day. And then the next task, proof chapter 1, it has scheduled that to happen on the first day too. Okay? And the next task, it has scheduled for that to happen. So all of my tasks are starting on the first day. Okay? So this is probably not the case unless you have a very large project and you have lots of different teams working on things at the same time. Then you may have several tasks that start on the very first day of your project. But right now, let's assume that we have a small team of people. Each one of these tasks need to happen one right after the other. So here, I'm just going to switch over to my task tab, and I'm going to select my first two tasks. Now, it doesn't matter if you click and drag on the task name or if you click and drag on the task ID number over on the left. Doesn't matter. If you just select both of them, you can use this button in the toolbar at the top. It looks like a little chain link. And when you hover over top of it, it's called the Link the Selected Tasks button. And it does just that. It links both of those tasks together. Now click on it and you can see what I mean. And basically what you've created is a finish to start relationship. So you have said when draft chapter 1 is finished, all the way over here, then you can start proofing chapter 1. And let's say that we want to do this for all of the tasks. So here I can select all of the remaining tasks, and I can click on the little chain link button up at the top. And that links them all together. Okay, so when one task finishes, the next one starts, and so on. Now, if you want to get really fancy with it, let's say that you're in a time crunch and you want to be able to start proofreading chapter 1, maybe halfway through the draft. You've got somebody else that's proofreading it, and you said, you know what, as soon as I'm done, halfway done, I'll start sending you something to proofread. In that case, if you kind of hover over top of the line that links the two bars together, if you double click on that, you can add what's called lag time. Okay? And lag time is anytime you want waiting time in between two tasks. Like, let's say you had planted grass and you want to wait 3 weeks before you cut the grass. That would be lag time. And that's entered here. If you want tasks to overlap, it's actually still entered into the lag time field, which is kind of throws people off sometimes, but it's entered in negative numbers. So I would enter, let's say, -7 days. Just think of it as the opposite of lag. And click OK. And then you'll notice how that task is now scheduled to start midway through drafting of the first chapter. Okay? And all the other tasks that are linked to it move along with it as well. Now be careful of this though, because we're not ready, or you may have to play with the dates a little bit, because like for example, what I just noticed is I moved my draft chapter 1, so yes, I can start on it on the 27th. I'll probably have things to proofread here. However, this task, add images, I'm not going to do that until I'm done proofreading it. Okay, so you may need to play with it or extend the proofreading dates or whatever. You could also link add images. Instead of linking it to proofread, you could link it to draft chapter 1, so they don't have to be right next to each other. So here I can select draft chapter 1. I'm going to select draft chapter 1. I'm going to hold down the control button and select add images, and then here I can link those as well. And that'll force it to happen when draft chapter 1 is complete. If you forget about the little control trick to skip over a task, that's just instead of clicking and dragging, if you wanted to skip a row, you just hold down control. If you forget that, you can always just type in the task number in the predecessor column. That's fine. Just separate them with commas. All right, now you may be wondering, I talked about this summary task up at the top, and you may be wondering why it still says 1 day duration. Well, right now, project doesn't recognize the fact that it's a summary task. It doesn't know that the tasks underneath it are supposed to roll up to it. Just because we're using it in that manner and we've typed in our task names in that manner, project doesn't necessarily know that. So we have to tell it that. So if I want to indent all of my tasks under this ops manual, I can select all of the tasks and just click and drag on the task number or the task name, and I can use my indent button in the toolbar up at the top. So I can click indent, and all of those tasks are indented under operations manual, and now all of the durations are totaled up into more of a summary row. So now you can see that the entire project will take 19 days duration and will finish on the 13th. If you add some lag time in there, let's say that after you proofread, for whatever reason, we're going to add a couple days of lag time. Maybe your resource is on vacation, or whatever. Here, or actually let's do it after add images. So right before I make changes, this is a good example. Let's say that you want to give it a few days, you want to let it circulate around your organization, really nothing that you're doing with the project, but you're waiting for other folks to review it. So really you probably should have a task in here for review and submit changes, but for the webinar example, we'll just pretend like we're just waiting for something. So here, I'm going to go back and double click on the line that links the two tasks together. It's still going to be a finish to start, but I'm just going to add some lag time. And remember, last time we did it in negative numbers because we wanted that task to happen sooner. In this case, we want the task to happen later. So we want the lag time. So we'll enter 3 days, and you'll notice that that task is pushed out. Now, you'll also notice that it was pushed out a little bit more than 3 days because it's ignoring the weekends. So Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and it's ready to start on Wednesday. All right, so if you wanted to add, let's say that you're doing all of your procedure guides, and here's your operations manual. Let's say that you also have a sales manual. So here, you can type in sales manual, and we can do the same thing for another typo. We can do the same thing for the sales manual. So here I can say, draft, proofread, and this one I'm doing a little bit differently. I'm typing in everything, but I'm not worrying about the durations or the start dates. Let's say add images. And then now I can go back and change the duration. So let's say my sales manual, it's going to be a little bit more involved. Let's say that drafting that will take 25 days. Proofing it will take 20. Adding the images maybe will take 5. And making the changes maybe 5. And then here, notice how when I entered my sales manual task, it just kind of fell in line with the other tasks. Whenever you add another task, it'll just continue with the same formatting as the task that's above it. So in this case, I just need to outdent this one because I want all of the tasks underneath it to fall under it. So here, when I have sales manual highlighted, I'm just going to select my outdent button in the toolbar at the top, move it out, and now you'll notice it becomes a true summary task with all of the durations rolled up. And then here, if I wanted to be really quick with my new trick that I learned about linking all of the tasks together, I can just select all of the tasks at once by clicking and dragging, and then using my link button at the top. I'm just going to double click on the timeline up at the top. Right now, some of my tasks are sort of falling off the screen. I can't see them all, and that's fine. Here you can control how your time scale is being shown. So here, top tier, we have it in the week, and then the bottom is by day. So here you can see the units, day, and how it's labeled with an S for Sunday and M for Monday. But if we wanted maybe just every other day or every third day, or if you wanted it by weeks, you could change it by weeks as well. So let's say every third day. Click OK, and then you can see more of the project. All right, one last thing I just wanted to mention before we wrap up are the resources. So let's say that you've got a team of people working on these projects and you want to be able to track who's doing what. Here, if you go over to the resource name column, here you can start to enter who's writing the draft. So let's say I'm going to write the draft. I'll enter my name, but Bob is going to proofread it, and Kayla is going to add the images, and then I am going to make the final changes. And you'll notice as soon as I started to type the letter P, it picked up my name, and here I can fill it in. A little bit different for the sales manual. Let's say that Bob is going to write the sales manual. Now once they're all typed in, my drop down works. So I had to type them in once. Let's say that I will proofread the sales manual. Well, let's say I'll add images to this one. And we'll say that Bob is going to make the final changes. So here you can control the resources. Now this is a little bit different if you're using Project Online. It's a little bit different. With Project Online, you set up what's called a resource pool, and then you can pull from your enterprise resources on who's working on your project, so you can kind of build a project team first. But for this example, we're just assuming that we're using a standalone version of Project, that we're not using Project Online, so you can just type in the resources. All right, that takes us to about the end of our half hour together. I just wanted to, like I said, continue on with the basics. I would love to get some feedback from you if you would like me to do a basics part 2 next month and kind of continue on where we left off here. I'd be more than happy to do that. If you'd rather I focus in on a specific topic like reporting or resources or the different views, let me know that as well, and we can do that. All right. If there are any questions, let me know. Just type in the chat window. I'll hang on here for a minute. Or again, feel free to hang out and ask. I'll take you off mute. And otherwise, thank you for joining. And we'll see you next month, I hope. Bye.